Welcome to your in-depth astrology overview and zodiac forecast for week commencing the 13th of January. I'm going to give you some standout details to look out for, but then on screen I'll share the event chart right at the start of the week, which always provides a lot of information and a backdrop for the following 7 days. Then as influences feed in, I'll go through each of those frame by frame to give you a clear picture of what to expect collectively, but please stay with me. Then I'll go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces to give you a flavour of what you can expect for your sign. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. If you're new here, this is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. If you're a returning visitor, thank you so much for your company. If you've yet to sub, please help the channel to thrive and click that sub button, but also the bell notification symbol. If you'd like to get your free daily horoscope fired to your device each morning, please see the link beneath this video. In terms of your year ahead personal forecast, I've changed my approach. You can now buy one and get one free. So effectively they're half price. Please see the choice of products below. So if you wanted to order your forecast, but your draconic natal analysis, you can now do that. So it's a bit more flexible. If you'd like to chat with me directly, I am a consultant astrologer. Please see my testimonials below and I'll link up with you through Zoom. If you're a patron, thank you so much for all your support. And if you'd like to buy me a coffee, I see that that's something that's become more popular. Well, I'd be delighted if that was possible too. Please see that link below as well. So this week begins, of course, with a full moon, but it's a full moon in the sign that the moon governs of Cancer. So that in a way is more radiant, but it is very close to Mars. And Mars in Cancer, so close to the moon, is quite a hostile influence. So I will share more about that. Ironically, the full moon in its opposition to the Sun in Capricorn actually forges a very lively link to Uranus. So Uranus, the planet of change, can actually be something that can help us this week. But if that balance between our feeling, home and emotional life and our worldly connections isn't quite in trim, that's something that the full moon asks us to look at. But the Sun is going to be opposite Mars, and that will reach a peak on Thursday. Mars, of course, in its retrograde in Cancer is in its fall. So that could see some power battles, to be honest, or for some people maybe feel a little bit more emotional or prickly with Mars in the feeling sign of Cancer. If a relationship matter does really need looking at, as Venus is advancing, it meets up in an exact conjunction in the second half of this week, but on Sunday with Saturn. If there is a weakness in a tie, it could come to a close, to be honest, but it's also an opportunity to have a frank exchange in a relationship that may still have some life in it. It just needs perhaps that honest discussion. As the week comes to a close, it's not just that conjunction between Venus and Saturn, it's also the transition of the Sun to the sign of Aquarius. It immediately meets up with Pluto. That isn't exact until the following Tuesday, but they're very, very close together. So a powerful combination, particularly in terms of plotting our long-term path or our friendships and our associations. On the screen now, I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the week. As ever, we always need to look at the two luminaries, and you can see at midnight on Monday morning, the moon is at 11 degrees in Cancer, so it hasn't quite moved forwards to meet the exact opposition with the Sun. Now basically a full moon is when the Sun and the moon are in competition, they're facing one another. The Sun in Capricorn is asking us to be mindful of our connection to the world at large, anything to do with the material plane. It's the sign of physical culmination, so it can be about goals, ambitions, work, property, our attitude, perhaps the status, whereas the moon, of course, is much more to do with how it feels and our immediate environment. And that's why, as the day goes on and the moon meets up with the opposition to the sun and with Mars so close to them in the mix, that's why it could be a particularly turbulent full moon. So if there is something at work that you don't feel comfortable about, or something at home that isn't quite working, it could be a very vibrant response, because the moon and Mars together is quite a combustible and rather impatient combination. But as I mentioned in my introduction, there is a great link between this full moon and Uranus, the planet of change, which is asking us to be flexible around how we approach resources, but particularly money. And of course, things are changing so quick in so many facets of life, it at times can feel rather breathless. But the sun in the sign of Capricorn can be about those more worldly hopes. So it's important to be open to approaching things with perhaps a fresh pair of eyes. So if someone suggests an opportunity or a role which is different, don't dismiss it out of hand. Now, as this week begins, also Neptune, one of the two rulers of Pisces, is angling very well to Mars. So even if something does give us a bit of a pushback in terms of the full moon, we can always use that particular aspect to look out for someone who may be slightly less fortunate than us. The other thing that's so notable at the start of this week is the position of the North Node. The true North Node has inversed into Pisces and is very, very close to that position of Neptune. So in some ways, it does give us an opportunity to trip the light fantastic, but it's also reminding us of the importance of compassion. Now, Saturn and Jupiter have been in quite a tough right angle so far this year, and of course that peaked on Christmas Eve. Now, by the middle of this week, that starts to loosen up a little bit, which is something that's really welcome. But I did tell you that at the end of the week, Venus applies to Saturn. And the reason this can be challenging is the sign of Pisces is the last zodiac sign, so it can be where things come to a close. So if that tie really hasn't been working for us, and maybe the full moon brings into the open some of the issues around why it's not working, that can be seminal. But equally, it could be where a relationship that has been developing slowly but surely actually locks in and becomes something more substantive. Now, the transition of the Sun to join up with Pluto in Aquarius is very exciting for this reason. Because if you recall, last year Pluto moved into the sign of Aquarius on the 21st of January. But this year, as the Sun arrives, well, Pluto is the waiting committee. So this is the first time in our lifetimes that this has happened. So it's a truly meaningful combination, and it's asking us all to become much more conscious of how we're all connected together. But if you are wanting to bring a more social element to your situation, after some of the more Capricornian energies of the start of this year, perhaps catch up with friends you haven't seen since the festivities, it's a great opportunity to do so with that particular conjunction. Now, if you've yet to watch your year 2025 deep dive video forecast, please see the link beneath this video. So Aries, your week commencing the 13th of January forecast begins with the North Node having switched out of your sign and into your 12th house. Over the next year and a half, it is going to be asking you some questions, but particularly about how accepting you are of the more psychological, spiritual and emotional realms. If that's something you've been resisting, particularly since Saturn's been in that area the last 2 years, the North Node is really asking you to just be a bit kinder and softer to yourself. Everyone has parts of their nature that perhaps we find a little harder to accept. But in a really dynamic way, this week beginning with the full moon is very powerful indeed, particularly as the sun within the mix of that is linking to Uranus. Now, Uranus has been disruptive since March 2019 in terms of your income, but it may also have seen lots of changes and therefore lots of opportunities. And this can create an opportunity. It's just the full moon suggests, particularly with your ruler Mars so close to it, that maybe your home or emotional life may need to flex a little bit in order for you to seize the opportunity. Now, if you're lucky enough to have family or a partner who are really in your corner, that may be less of an issue. But if you are trying to juggle work opportunities with home demands, then it could be a little challenging. However, as this week goes on, the combination between Venus and Saturn in your 12th house is intriguing. If there is someone that you've had a crush on, and perhaps that relationship has been developing in a very slow way, that combination could give you food for thought about whether you should open up and take that risk of making the first move. However, by the end of the week, as the sun moves into the friendly Aquarius for you, one of the great ways to perhaps move that relationship's possibility forwards is in a more relaxed, informal way. Perhaps inviting someone to go for a walk, perhaps meet up for a coffee, not necessarily a full-on date. But if your social world has been a little stagnant since the turn of the year, you certainly get a great opportunity to reignite things at the end of this week, particularly if someone has seemed to have been somewhat out of touch. But you know, actually, with such a lot of planets in Pisces recently, I think you've been doing quite a lot of deep thinking, reminiscing, or perhaps just needing to have something of a break. But if you get the chance to go again, particularly around your long-term hopes, the end of this week can be particularly significant for you. Aries, if you've yet to watch your year 2025 deep dive video forecast, please see the link beneath this video. So Taurus, your week commencing the 13th of January forecast begins with Uranus in your sign, the planet of freedom, but the planet of revolution in a fine link with the sun in your sister Earth sign of Capricorn. This is a great link to think about bringing exciting new possibilities into your life. But at the end of last week, the North Node inversed into your sector of friendship. And your sector of friendship is very lively this week, not just because the node connects to Neptune, suggesting if you spent time with someone who really inspires you, you could have a very animated conversation. But equally, if you're around people who you feel aren't really getting where you're coming from around your ideas, the full moon and the energy of Uranus could throw up a situation where you feel closed in, restricted, not sure what to do. And therefore the North Node moving into your 11th house, which can be very much about your future, could see you wondering whether you need to make some kind of fundamental change in order to liberate yourself from some of these more restrictive people. And because Saturn has made you much more conscious over the last couple of years of who's really good for you and who isn't, once Venus, your ruler, connects with Saturn at the end of this week, there may be another question around a friendship or perhaps even a romantic involvement. And that question is, do I feel that this person or this involvement is right for me for my longer term? Because if it's not, the full moon this week could push you to be a little bit more provocative, along with the energy of Uranus, stand up for what makes you different. And that isn't necessarily easy for a sign that really appreciates a degree of continuity in their lives. Now, later in the week, as the sun moves right to the top of your scope, the zenith of your chart, it connects to Pluto. Now, Pluto since March 2023 for 11 weeks, and then since the 21st of January last year through to the 2nd of September, then again from the 19th of November around to now, it's been asking you to keep evolving when it comes to your work, career and connection to the world at large. And with the sun joining up, that could bring with it a big opportunity around your work. But it's important that you're not rigid, because the energy of Uranus can at times frazzle us. It can leave us feeling on edge. It can also make us more conscious of where we want to maintain our independence, whereas the 10th house energy of the Sun and Pluto could require some kind of commitment to an organization, an employer, a contract, a situation which will have some obligations and responsibilities. So as much as this week starts off very much about idealism and freedom and conversation, perhaps even some heated conversations, by the end of the week the focus switches on to really what your role is in the wider world. It's all mixed together, it's exciting stuff, but you're asked to get in touch with what really feels right for you for the long term, but also your higher values. If you've yet to watch your year 2025 deep dive video forecast Taurus, please see the link beneath this video. So Gemini, your week commencing the 13th of January forecast can see some very strong desires echoing around your situation. It may be a big ticket item you see in the sales. It could be someone who's really capturing your imagination in a more romantic context. But whatever it is you yearn for, you're going to yearn for it big time. But when it comes to finances, the full moon at the start of this week could make you more aware of the needing to balance the ins and outgoings in your situation, but you could find yourself a little bit resistant to the constraints that there may be. Also, Uranus, the planet of surprises, in its link to the Sun, is asking you to be open-minded about tuning into your past history of experiences, knowledge and talents, and in some ways repurposing something you did then in a new and fresh way, because by the end of this week there could be a superb opportunity which starts to manifest itself for you. Now, the North Node, which is very much to do with a pull that we have collectively, moved at the end of last week into the part of your chart to do with your connections to the world at large. If you are dealing with someone, particularly an employer, where it's not very nurturing, they're not very tuned into the amount of hard work and application you're investing, and you don't feel that you're getting the rewards that are due to you, as Venus meets up with Saturn towards the end of this week, that could see your frustration peak. But it also gives you an opportunity to use your natural communication skills to articulate what you want in a delicate way. And with the Sun moving into your sister air sign of Aquarius as the week draws to a close, and also merging with the powerful transformational energies of Pluto, if you do want to pitch a new idea or connect with a potential employer or contractor or client, the chances are you can do it with passion, conviction, but also a great desire to change your situation from how it is now. But I feel earlier in the week you may find yourself having to grapple with a part of your nature which could be much more impulsive than is ordinarily the case. So even if it's down to that New Year's resolution around a diet plan, you may find that temptation is very strong, particularly at the start of this week. Have a great week, Gemini. If you've yet to watch your year 2025 deep dive video forecast, please see the link beneath this video. So Cancer, your week commencing the 13th of January forecast begins with the full moon in your sign. But what makes this year so unique is the role of Mars, very close to the position of the moon. Now, you have a reputation of someone who dislikes all-out conflict. You'll go left, you'll go right, you'll withdraw. That's because of the crab archetype. But of course, when you're really stirred, you can race forwards and give someone a mighty nip. And you may surprise yourself by just how determined you can be to assert how you feel. Now, when it comes to relationships, with the Sun in your 7th house, it's possible that something isn't quite as you would like, but it doesn't have to be only in a romantic context. It could be with a colleague, it could be with a neighbour, a friend, a family member, but you may find yourself being bolder in saying how you feel. But I think that is absolutely brilliant, because sometimes when you're not sure, you can withdraw. But the trouble with withdrawing, it doesn't actually resolve the issues. It just creates a vacuum, and the energy stays within you, and that obviously can affect you in lots of different ways. Also, Uranus, the planet of freedom, feeds into this full moon in a really constructive way. So it may be time to have a very frank exchange of views, but also, most of all, set your boundaries. And with Mars going exactly opposite the Sun by Thursday, the energy from this full moon is going to be very lively right through then, and to be honest, for the following couple of weeks too. But also, of course, at the end of last week, the North Node inversed into the sign of Pisces, which for you can be about liberation, freedom, exploration. But Saturn's been making that mighty difficult the last couple of years. And this week, as the week goes on, Venus in Pisces, along with the North Node and Neptune, which actually link brilliantly to Mars at the start of this week, well, they're going to come together, Venus and Saturn, in your ninth house. But that can be about higher truths, but it could also be about a travel plan. Now, Saturn can work in a myriad of ways. For sure, it can create difficulties. So, for example, if you're very honest with someone this week and they can't accept where you're coming from, that could create a real coolness around the involvement. But equally, Saturn can help you to bake in a travel plan that really can excite you. So something could get firmed up by the end of the week. But then, of course, the Sun makes the transition from your opposite sign into the 8th house, and laying in wait is the deep transformative Pluto. If a relationship really isn't working for you, I feel the full moon, Mars giving you more confidence to assert yourself, but also Uranus in the mix, reminding you of your rights as an individual, and Saturn being joined by Venus, all points towards the potential, with the Sun applying to Pluto at the end of this week, for you to leave a situation which isn't working for you. But it doesn't have to be romantic. But I would give the situation that you're faced with at the present time an opportunity to have an open discussion. I think it would be much better for you, and if you do need to be firm, you can grow in confidence from that. If you've yet to watch your year 2025 deep dive video forecast, please see the link beneath this video for more. So Leo, your week commencing the 13th of January forecast begins with the North Node having inversed join up with Neptune in your 8th house. The 8th house is quite complex. It can be where we're invested, it can also be where we're devoted, but it also can be a time of transformation. Because you've had Saturn in that area for the last couple of years, joint finances particularly, or any challenges around intimacy may have really shown up. Your sensitivity around those things can really be heightened by that combination. But they both link back to Mars in your 12th house. Is there something that you're avoiding around a complex issue in your life? Because that, and the full moon on Monday, and the fact that Uranus feeds into that full moon, suggest that you may need to engage with something that perhaps has been proven to be a little worrisome or difficult. And it may, in a way, be a challenge for you to do so, because it can feel that your vulnerabilities are being exposed. It's very important for Leo people to feel respected. And ever since Mars inverted in its retrograde on the 6th of January into the sensitive Cancer, you may have felt that your emotional world was that much more turbulent. Also professionally, with the Sun in the 6th house, in the full moon, that's very much about details, it's about practicalities. But it also can see colleagues being quite critical, but they may not express that criticism in an open way. So all round, it's quite a complex set of energies at the very start of this week for you. but keep the faith, because perhaps something that is delicate does actually need to come out, whether it's you saying how you feel or someone sharing how they feel about you. It may be an observation that you find difficult to hear. It could be in some ways quite personal, but once it's released, it helps you to move forwards, and that release could happen as Venus applies to Saturn. Now, ironically, particularly around finances, that's a combination which could bring a stroke of fortune. It may be some kind of deal is cemented in, but unfortunately, in terms of the intimate side of a relationship, if things haven't been working very well, that can make you or the other person much more aware of the distance that seems to have emerged between you. But if you really want to make this alliance work, and it doesn't have to be a romantic involvement, as the Sun moves to join up with Pluto at the end of this week in your sector of relating, that could be a time of resetting your position, becoming much more conscious that there is a need to see beyond what's more obviously in front of you. And I think the energy in Pisces at the present time, and as this week goes on, is really asking you to embrace that more psychological dimension. It will give you a lot more understanding of why some things have felt out of kilter, or why some people have felt distant or detached, or perhaps not very in touch with you. By the end of this week, you can go on the front foot and really say what you want, but also demand them to say how they really feel. If you've yet to watch your year 2025 deep dive video forecast, please see the link beneath this video. So Virgo, your week commencing the 13th of January forecast begins with that very potent full moon, but it could flag up to you a desire to be more decisive when it comes to your long-term future. Now, there's part of your nature that likes to help people, that likes to provide services, that likes to have some kind of meaningful structure, but because Mars is in the mix, it could make you feel a lot bolder and braver about doing something more dynamic, not least because Uranus, the planet of change, is linking into this event also in a very exciting way. So although it could be unsettling to think about different options, and someone close to you may not necessarily be particularly approving that you're developing this desire for a change, and with Venus meeting Saturn by the end of the week, there could be the potential for some cool discussions about that, particularly if you're not on the same celestial page. But then when the Sun moves also at the end of the week and joins up with Pluto in your 6th house, it's really saying to you that something about the structure of your life, which has remained pretty constant for some time, may truly be in the works for some kind of big alteration. And sometimes in life, when we resist the change, when it actually comes, it's much more painful to bear. And that's exactly what can happen with the Sun moving to Aquarius, linking up with Pluto. Pluto's been pushing you bit by bit since March 2023, as it's gone through its entry into Aquarius, to think about where you provide that service, where you get your personal satisfaction, how you keep your life in order, and also how you stay fit. All areas that you're very strong on, but Pluto suggests that there may be some important tweaks or alterations that you do really need to seriously consider. And it could even be around a romantic relationship where you're not feeling particularly happy, that the need to break out, be more dynamic and live in your own energy and your own image is really part of this week's story. Have a great week, Virgo. If you've yet to watch your year 2025 deep dive video forecast, please see the link below. So Libra, your week commencing the 13th of January forecast starts with the giant ramifications of that full moon. It's a full moon in the part of your chart to do with your potential for authority, leadership. It can be to do with your goals and ambitions. Because Mars is in the mix, it's pushing you to be even more brave in your approach, because there's part of you, Libra, that essentially is a people pleaser. But now the North Node has inversed into your 6th house. You're really being asked to think much more about your personal welfare, your health, your fitness, the organisation in your life. Is your life running quite as well as it could do? And if that means that you have to push back against some of the demands or expectations other people have of you, whether it's people really close to you, that's the Sun in the sign of Capricorn, along with Mercury now, or it is to do with your professional situation, this is going to be a key week. But there is the opportunity too to strike out in some kind of fresh, new and very exciting way, because as much as Mars can bring an element of turbulence to the equation, what Uranus is doing in its angle to the lunation is asking you to be very open-minded, particularly how you earn money for the long term. Now, your ruler Venus is in the part of your situation to do a sacrifice. And over the last few years, there does seem to have been a huge amount of demands upon you, physical, emotional, practical. But if you do need to be a bit stronger in saying how you feel and how you want things to be, as Venus meets up with Saturn towards the end of this week, you can find your voice. Also with the Sun moving into your sister air sign of Aquarius and combining with Pluto as the week draws to a close, some major transformations can start to unfold in your situation. But they can be transformations that are very creative, they could be playful, they could be much more interactive and social, but somehow or another something that maybe you've been sustaining for the good of someone else or trying to keep the peace, that is something that may need challenging in quite a major way this week. Have a great week, Libra. If you've yet to watch your year 2025 deep dive video forecast, please see the link beneath this video. So Scorpio, your week commencing the 13th of January forecast begins with your traditional ruler Mars very close to the full moon in your sister water sign of Cancer. Now it's a full moon that occurs every year, but not usually with Mars in the mix. When we put the moon and Mars together, it can be a very volatile combination. For you, it's house 9. This is where you want freedom. It could be freedom from some of your self-imposed structures, but there's a sense of restlessness that can come from this particular lunation this year. Maybe also you're going to find yourself much more inclined to be direct when it comes to your opinions. And part of the reason for that is that Uranus, the planet of surprises, but also of change, links into this full moon in a very exciting but positive way for you. So if there's someone, for example, that you're really drawn towards, this combination can give you the extra energy, thrust, but also self-belief in order to reach out and connect to them. Also, Venus, the planet of relating, is in the most romantic part of your scope, but combining with the rather restrictive energies of Saturn towards the end of this week. If there is a love relationship which isn't working very well for you, or socially, a group of people or one particular person are too demanding of you, what I feel Saturn is going to do with Venus is make you much more aware of setting out what works for you. You're not going to hold back, therefore, this week from expressing those opinions. You could be more forthright, but equally, you could decide to engage in something which really stimulates your thinking and imagination, a course of education, a travel plan. But by the end of the week, ironically, as the Sun moves into Aquarius and meets up with your modern ruler Pluto, you may find yourself, whatever's happened earlier in the week, just wanting to withdraw a little bit and try to decompress and work out what the meaning of all this intense energy truly is for you. In fact, on Thursday, as the sun goes exactly opposite your traditional ruler Mars, don't be surprised if you're extremely restless. If you can do something physical or active to burn that off, do. But by the end of the week, home, emotion and family matters are going to capture your imagination and your attention and energy a great deal more. Have a great week, Scorpio. If you've yet to watch your year 2025 deep dive video forecast, please see the link beneath this video. So Sagittarius, your week commencing the 13th of January forecast is going to bring into sharp relief commitments. You're a sign that has a real appreciation of freedom, adventure, perhaps independence as well. But because the full moon is in the 8th house, that's a very intense energy. It can be to do with things like long-term financial planning, shared resources, investments, but equally it can be to do with very close, even intimate romantic involvements. But Mars is very close to the full moon. Mars and the moon together in the 8th house speaks of some potential for a change or something that's been simmering to come up to some kind of boil. With the position of Mars going exactly opposite the sun on Thursday, that could be the point when it really reaches a climax. Essentially where the sun and Mercury are is to do with everyday money, but also how you feel about yourself, your self-worth, your values. The 8th house is that interface with others. Now, in a complex but way that can create opportunities, Uranus, the planet of change, is suggesting that if you're open to rescheduling things, trying some fresh approaches, you could see some opportunities for an improvement, and that could see an upturn in your finances. But because Venus, the planet of money as well as relating, is in a very security orientated part of your chart and meets with Saturn towards the end of this week, you may find yourself not wanting to be in the space to be more speculative or even gamble. In fact, you may want to play very, very cautiously. Also, Venus joining with Saturn points towards maybe some family or home-based demands. If you're wanting to make some improvements to your abode, that can be a very constructive influence. The more artistic and creative energies of Venus align with the structural energies of Saturn. That can be really good. But whatever you find happening this week, if it does feel like an impasse, or someone you're trying to collaborate with is just not seeing your viewpoint, once the sun and its move into Aquarius occurs at the end of the week and its connection to Pluto, I feel that the dialogue will occur there, or you'll create the thinking in order to recalibrate your approach in a way which works for you. But I do think a very intense week can be in store for all of us, but in your case it may be about the ins and outgoings around your finances, but also about who you're most connected to or not. But equally, it could be who you want to disconnect to, or it could be who you're finding yourself compulsively drawn towards, even if you kind of know at some other level that that's not necessarily the best thing for you. So by the end of the week, with the dialogue and the thinking side of the situation improving, you will be able to make sense by then. If you've yet to watch your year 2025 deep dive video forecast, please see the link beneath this one. So Capricorn, your week commencing the 13th of January forecast could be very exciting in some ways. Although the full moon could bring into the open a challenge or some kind of situation which is a little more confrontational, to be honest, it could also give you the confidence to actually assert what you want. And that in itself can create excitement. So let's, for example, think about partnership. In any kind of alliance, because the Sun and more recently Mercury have been asking you to really focus on your individual talents, and in the case of Pluto, historically since 2008, you may have been working on something very, very hard, but someone's support or advice may have been part of the mix, and you may feel that that relationship in some way needs to shift. Now, with Mars in your 7th house and coming exactly opposite the Sun in your sign on Thursday, you could find yourself being a lot more assertive. But equally, if there's someone you really like and you are a little bit cautious around relationships generally, the opposition between the Sun and Mars can give you the confidence to actually say to that person how you feel. And Uranus is in the mix as well, so things can happen very quickly, and there could be a real opportunity to get together with a group of friends that you find very exciting and lively to be around. But in an ongoing relationship of any kind, it doesn't have to be romantic. You could just be a lot more to the point, and the other person may find that a little bit difficult to be on the end of. So with Venus, the relator, but also the money planet, in the part of your chart that it's going to combine with your ruler towards the end of the week, I do think it's going to be very important to embrace as much diplomacy as you can muster, even if you feel very exasperated or feel someone's been unreasonable. Try not to go that route. Try to be as measured as possible in what you say. Then by the end of the week, as the Sun moves into Aquarius, out of your sign, and combines with Pluto, you will, I feel, see just how far you've come, if not in a tangible, material or financial way, just in terms of how you are valuing you and really aligning more with your sense of self-worth. So this week could be a week when there are demands from others. Perhaps they feel you've been too preoccupied with what you're doing and they can be outspoken, or it may be you that's going to be outspoken too. But equally, there could be new exciting connections made that could rattle along at the speed of light. But the most important thing this week is to say what you mean and mean what you say. Have a great week. If you've yet to watch your year 2025 deep dive video forecast, please see the link beneath this video. So Aquarius, your week commencing the 13th of January forecast has a beautiful outcome, with the Sun moving into your sign on Sunday, but also merging with Pluto, the planet of transformation, almost straight away. But the week begins with a full moon in the part of your chart to do with life's practicalities. Now that can be organisation, it can be your work responsibilities, it can be your routines, your approach to what you eat and drink and exercise. But because Mars is so close to that full moon, when the moon and Mars are so tethered together, it can create turbulence and instability. Now, for example, at work, if you're someone who routinely takes on extra demands uncomplainingly, you may find yourself much less inclined to do that. And the reason for this, Aquarius, is that the Sun in your 12th house, along with Mercury, is very much to do with issues that may have been simmering beneath the surface, that have needed grappling with, that perhaps for whatever reason haven't quite come out. And it may be some resentments on your part. It could be some hidden stuff that you don't know about. So for example, in your professional situation, someone may want more from you, but not necessarily want to give you more, because your financial sector has been afflicted by strict Saturn over the last couple of years. Now, although the planet of relating, but also money, applies to Saturn, your traditional ruler, at the end of this week, the chances are that combination is asking you to think ultra realistically about your circumstances. That may mean more economies. It may mean having a conversation with someone that you're routinely very generous to let them know that they need to take more responsibility for their situation. Also, a second house combination between Saturn and Venus can also test our sense of self-worth, because that's what Venus is also about. So it's important that you do stay strong with what you are and what you represent. Uranus has been a very turbulent influence since March 2019. In fact, through the 5 months since mid-May of 2018, with that square to Mars. But Uranus, this week actually could provide some opportunities. It may require you, in order to grasp them, to flex around your routines and not be too rigid in how you approach things. You are a fixed sign. You have that reputation for being zany and innovative and forward thinking. It can be justified at times, but there's another side of you that likes to stick with what you know, and that's the bit that can be truly challenged this week. So whatever part of your life hasn't quite been working, isn't quite in balance, there may be something that will come into the open this week, and it does need to be dealt with head on, particularly on Thursday when Mars and the Sun go opposite. However, once the Sun moves into your sign and combines with Pluto, you'll start to see that a momentum is building up for a huge transformation in your life, which will become really manifestly obvious by the end of January. And I can tell you it's hugely exciting and dynamic, but this is the week when you may need to come to terms with parts of your situation which are not quite working. To discover what year 2025 holds for you, please watch your deep dive video forecast if you've yet to do so by clicking the link under this one. So Pisces, your week commencing the 13th of January forecast begins with that highly intense full moon. Now, we know full moons can bring issues into the open, but for you, because the moon position is so close to Mars in the 5th house of your chart, this can give you extra spark and dynamism when it comes to showcasing your talent, your flair, your creativity, but also your passion, which is what Mars is about. But let's think back over the last couple of years. Saturn has been quite the restraining influence in your sign. It hasn't been easy. You've had to make sacrifices. And if you are someone who is more social, interactive and playful, that part of your life may have in some ways taken a little bit of a back seat. Also because Venus, the planet of relating, has recently moved into your sign. That's been reminding you of your need to be in touch with your individual needs. But Venus is going to meet with Saturn later this week, and that could be a shuddering point of reality, but particularly around your social and romantic interactions, because this full moon, if there is someone that you're strongly attracted to but it's not happening, can give you the push to make something happen. But equally, if there's someone in your social situation, for example, who seems to want to dominate or control your time, or is a little jealous or possessive of you, that's something that you're not going to be in the mood to tolerate, because Uranus, the planet of freedom, is in a part of your chart which is going to help you to find your voice, but particularly your voice around where you can glow up. Why should you dim yourself in order to please other people? That's really the equation of this week. For example, in a love relationship, if you're involved with someone who doesn't seem to appreciate some of your talents and can at times damn you with faint praise, that may be something that really could aggravate you. If there has been more than one person interested in you of late, Venus's application to Saturn pushes you to make a binding decision of who's right for you. But as much as there's all these opportunities this week, as the week draws to a close, the Sun does move into a much more reflective, quieter and more healing part of your chart and merges with the transformational Pluto. That's going to become exact on Tuesday of the following week. But Pluto's so close to the Sun at the end of this week. Whatever you deal with this week, whatever decisions you decide to make, the chances are you will want to just invert a little bit into your own space and world in order to let those feelings percolate through you. Now that can be part of your nature at the best of times, and it will get stronger as this week draws to a close. But some kind of battle needs to be staged this week where you stand up how you feel about something and your passion about that topic is really going to come through, but it may mean that people that you work or connect to collectively could feel a little bit pushed out by what you're saying, but it may be something that you do have to assert. Pisces, if you've yet to watch your year 2025 deep dive video forecast, please see the link beneath this video. But have a great week.